We're now joined in studio by Susan Booysen, a professor at the Wits School of Governance, and Professor Simphiwe Sesanti from UNISA in our Pretoria studio. Professor Booysen, Professor Sesanti, thank you very much for joining us from our Pretoria studio. Prof. Sesanti, I actually want to start with you. When ANC President Cyril Ramaphosa announced yesterday that this matter was going to be resolved by the NEC today, did we get a feeling that it would be resolved, considering we're now 8 hours into this meeting?
It is very difficult to tell, but we would recall that on the basis of fact, when he was addressing the Grand Parade over the weekend, he told the South Africans that the issue would today be resolved and the transition, so that is what he promised to the people. Whether or not it is going to be realized is, cannot be told. As it were, we're all aware that there's a meeting that is taking place at the moment. That meeting has been long, and until now, nobody knows what is taking place. So it is an indication that, the discussion is a very difficult one, and the issues are very complex.
Professor Booysen, Prof. Sesanti mentions that this is clearly a difficult discussion. We've mentioned how long it's taken today, but also the past 2 weeks have been quite tumultuous for the ANC, but the country as a whole. Your sentiments on this meeting?
Yes, it was an extraordinary 2 weeks, and we know that so much has been happening inside the ANC, behind closed doors, below radar screens, but in that, all indications are that the NEC had given a very clear mandate to the NWC, Working Committee of the ANC, and then to the top 6 of the ANC to go and negotiate with, talk to, engage with President Zuma on the modalities of his exit from power. So the NEC had already taken that decision. And of course, yes, then there would have been a special meeting of the NEC last week.
Which was cancelled.
Cancelled because President Zuma played one of his games. He said, no, he's prepared to talk. And then postponed and postponed. And the reasons for why he postponed at that stage are probably quite instructive to the reasons why these discussions today are dragging out so much. And the reason for that could really be anything between simply who makes the announcement, the presidency or of South Africa or the ANC, to other very complex issues of handing over the reins to a new president. We know, a quick point on this one, President Zuma has been talking a lot about a smooth transition, how essential that is. Part of that smooth transition could be that there are all kinds of deals that have been struck, all kinds of bad baggage that is associated with an outgoing president that President Zuma might use to manipulate the NEC and to say that, but if I'm not allowed to be in power for another 2 or 3 months, you people are the ones, or the new president is the one who might have to clear up this or that issue. We know he wasn't allowed to do a presentation, but there are a few of his outspoken apologists left in the NEC who might very well be doing it in debates on his behalf.
And I think that's something I want us to stick to. Prof. Sesanti, let's look at this transition period. And I think we're not necessarily in it yet because no announcement has been made. But for the most part, the sentiments that have also been held by the current ANC President Cyril Ramaphosa, saying that, he doesn't want this entire situation to be humiliating for the president. He doesn't want to create instability. But there's so much uncertainty, which is essentially creating instability. Prof. Sesanti?
Yes.
Well, we've got to consider that there's a history to this. To begin with, when we look back with regards to President Mbeki, we know that when he was recalled, there was a split within the organization. And so if you're listening carefully to the deputy president of the country and the president of the ANC, he was saying on Saturday that, the interest is to do something that would be to the interest of the South African nation. But he also specified that it also has got to be in the interest of the ANC. And so that being the case, then, there's a difficult balance to maintain because if, you must recall that, when the ANC went to the conference last year, there were serious divisions within the organization. And as part of its quest for a new renewal, there is also a big desire, to bring people together so that what would be the point, for instance, of getting rid of, President Zuma and leaving an organization that is vulnerable, that may not be able, to win the 29 elections. Because as you were observing, even today, one of the major pushes of the opposition is not just to see President Zuma's back, but is also interested in seeing the back of the ANC. It says that once Zuma is gone, that will be done, but thereafter, Parliament must be dissolved and we start from afresh. And prior that, you would hear discussions that all over the place, the opposition is very keen to see to it that by 2019, it robs or denies the ANC of a 50%. So therefore, there is that kind of a push, and whatever the ANC does, it is conscious of that reality, and so whatever it does, it must also preserve itself.
I actually want us to touch on the opposition, but a little later on in our discussion. Before that, let's take a step back and look at some of the divisions within the ANC, because that's what keeps coming up constantly.
Yes,
you have divisions within the ANC currently. We saw it during the elective conference. It's been playing out a lot, almost very terribly and horribly in the media recently, where that's becoming very obvious to the public.
Yes.
Your take on that, Prof?
Yes. And we know that Cyril Ramaphosa is very, very aware of the fact that he was elected at Nasrec December last year by the narrowest of majorities. And so he has also been very, very careful not to be seen to be doing things on behalf of the ANC, but taking great care to take his NEC, the NEC of the ANC, with him in the process and try to create unity in that respect. So it has been an effort to get that going all along, and as a gesture of outreach to the opposing factions, it has been stated that no humiliation of the president. But that faction and Zuma himself have also been using that chant, can I say, of no humiliation as a type of a fallback position and holding ANC and the Ramaphosa people a bit too hostage with that. Don't do it that way, it could create embarrassment. But that is overall really a bit rich, and because it's a president that has really been embarrassing South Africa, and in particular also the ANC, in so many respects. Of course, not everybody else in the ANC is entirely innocent, but a large source of the embarrassment of the ANC and the decline and the loss of trust in the ANC by at popular level, electoral level, in the last decade has been attributable to Zuma and people gathered around him. And so the unity, it is also a type of unity that has to almost be struck at all costs, because to get real unity going, the new people who want to renew and want to show that there is an alternative ANC in there, they would have to, by definition, strike deals with the people who have been more corrupt and more of a discredit to the ANC. So it is a huge predicament, contradiction for the ANC at this stage.
Now, time is not really on the ANC side at this point in time. I mean, when you look at how close we are to those 2019 elections, as Professor Sesanti mentioned, it's quite scary for them, because there's a lot of uncertainty, as we mentioned.
Yes.
But more importantly, is there enough time? And Prof. Sesanti, I want you to take this first, where we say, is there enough time to garner the support that they would have clearly lost by the end of the so-called transition period?
Well, people like Professor Susan Booysen, who are experts in politics, will tell you that a day, a week, a month is a very long time in politics. And so a lot can happen in between, depending, on the art that you apply in whatever you do. So it is that chess playing that is taking place within the ANC, looking at the possibilities and what the potentialities within the South African political arena. So we're in 2018 now, and soon we're going to have that. That being the case, then one has got to think very intensely and very, strategically. So there's very little time to be direct and answering your question, Tabile. But within that time, the kind of decision that is taken must be a decision that will benefit them, and quickly. Let me quickly let on a point that has just been raised by Professor Booysen. What in this country, and what is rather disturbing, is that of course President Zuma is the president of the country and was the president of the ANC, but to isolate, and I think that this is one of his arguments, to isolate him and to blame everything on him as if he was the only individual, taking all the decisions and all the power, I don't think that is quite fair. And it says a lot, about the people within the ANC. And I think that's why they are in the difficulty that they are in now. Consider, for instance, that in the last elections, not the 2017, but the 2012, Cyril Ramaphosa was on the slate of, Jacob Zuma. He became the deputy president of Jacob Zuma, knowing pretty well the track record, of Jacob Zuma. And so you would recall at one stage, the Malemas and the Blaine Zimandes were the comrades. And now they are turning around after being thrown under the bus, and pointing all the fingers. And yet, I even recall at one stage, Zweli Zimbabwe saying that in Zuma, we see ourselves. So it is not so much about an individual man. Zuma also recognizes this, that at a particular time when it suited certain people, they were his allies. And these are the kinds of questions that must also be raised.
Prof, I actually want us to now delve into what the opposition parties said today at that press briefing. But before that, we're going to take a short break. We'll be back with more after this. Don't go anywhere.